welcome to another episode of Book HQ. So today I'm going to be talking about Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. It's originally a dark fantasy book by Ransom Riggs, and it was recently adapted into the movie that came out in September, the Tim Burton movie. So I have so many feelings about this movie, and so many feelings about the book, but most of my feelings are about this movie. So I was, eagerly waiting to see this movie since I first saw the trailer that came out in March earlier this year, and I just thought it would be amazing, and I had great hopes for it. But I hadn't read the book yet, so I went ahead and I read the book. Like, my challenge was read the book before the film comes out, and I did that fairly easily because the book is amazing, wonderfully paced, very compelling, and just so much suspense. It's just like once you start reading it, it's like tick, 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 you just keep going until the end, and even then you are begging for more. So I went to watch the movie. I was really, really excited about watching the movie, and when I watched it, and I don't say this often, I feel like I never really watch a movie that's an adaptation of a book and I'm like, oh my gosh, no. And I'm not really saying that either about this, but okay, let me explain myself. So what I really feel like? I feel like somebody wanted to make a happy-go-lucky sort of cross between Snow Day and Home Alone movie, but people really wanted Miss Peregrine's. So what they did was they made that happy-go-lucky Snow Day slash Home Alone movie with elements of Miss Peregrine's Home. I went and I saw the movie. I saw it at Gaumont. I had a free ticket, and it starts off well. It starts off very much like the book, and I feel like what the problem with the movie is that, like, it just goes dramatically off script. The writer, I've got my cheat sheet here. So the writer is Jane Goldman, and it just goes dramatically off script, just kind of like right from the beginning too, because like we have Asa Butterfield as Jacob Portman, and in the beginning of the film, in the beginning of the book, there's a really good foundation laid to explain to you his character. Like, he's not really a nice kid. He's kind of a jerk because he's a rich kid who's going to inherit this business, like this huge medical aid business, whether he wants to or not, so he can do what he wants. And I felt like the film really had him be that sort of stereotypical, like, oh, he's a dork and he's bullied, and so we feel for him already from the get-go, which he kind of was. But then he had this huge, like, friend who used to keep bullies away, so the bullying stopped, but in the movie they show him at his workplace, being a good worker, which what isn't? In the book, he's like, yeah, I don't really care, I don't have to do, what I'm supposed to do because whatever, like, I'm the boss's kid. And he feels, they talk about that, he's feeling, in the movie, they talk about his feelings of how he's, he feels like his life is already, like, mapped out for him, so he doesn't really have to do much about anything. And he talks about how, like, co-workers resent him. That resentment you have when the boss's kid comes and starts working in the business too. That's what they have for him. But in the movie, his supervisor is very nice to him. They like each other. She even drives out with him when he gets the call about his grandfather. She drives out with him to go and see his grandfather, which does not happen like that in the book. In the book, it's that friend, the big friend who I talked about, who keeps bullies at bay, who goes with him, and he has a gun with him and all of that. And so I was just like, why did you need to change that? Why? And then he's also a loner because there's no mention of a friend of any kind anywhere except for the store supervisor, which is not what it is in the book. So already there I was like, schlep. Then, they don't really talk as much in the movie, not enough for us to understand anyway, what the issue is with his dad and his mom, like the dynamic between his dad and his mom is the wealthy one, and his father kind of just married into this wealth, and then he's a writer, but not really seriously, because he doesn't really have to be, and he's kind of lazy and all of this. They don't mention any of that. So then, the Grandpa Portman, Abe Portman, dies violently, and then, like, he's seeing a specialist, a therapist, Jacob now. And there's no real explanation as to, like, in the movie anyway, why he's seeing this therapist or this specialist. or the significance of the trauma that he's gone through mentally or that he continues to go through. And that's not really explored at all. So like you're watching it and you're like, okay, so his grandfather died and now he's seeing a therapist. Which I think was really better explained in the book. Because they started off in this movie with just like going off script. So they were like, you know, what the heck? We've already changed this much. Let's just go all the way. Dr. Golan in the book is a man. Dr. Golan in the movie is played by Allison Janney, and it's a woman, obviously. So again, an unnecessary change, but whatever, we're doing what we want. Here we go. Then they show his mom, and it's like completely different character to what she's like in the book. You know, she's like apparently this businesswoman in a business suit, and she's like, you are not going to disrupt my, you know, my life and my schedule. And it's like, she's not really like that in the, like, or that open about it in the book. I think she's fair. In the book, she's very rich, spoiled, but she's not really working. So she's not really like in business suits, whatever. And she's very encouraging and nurturing, but like, Jacob knows, and he thinks it to himself, that it's really like pretentious, and she's just like, yeah, do go off on this trip so that I can have my time alone to have like my social life. But like in the movie, she just like outright says it, again in her power suit, and I was like, oh, no. So, the journey continues. Him and his dad, they end up in Ireland, Wales, on the island after the grandpa dies to find some clues, to find out like, you know, so that Jacob can get closure is what the like excuse or the premises of their going there. So they're there. Jacob, like they left out so much stuff. So Jacob, which is pivotal, and I mean, like when I say left out stuff, I'm not talking about, oh, they left out a Tom Bombadil chapter, or like they just neglected to go into depth about like a house elf uprising. This is not that kind of left out. This is like lot of really important things that they left out. So anyway, so they go to Ireland. They're staying at the priest hole, and there's like a lot of history behind the name, the priest hole, and the place that they're staying. None of that is mentioned. They don't go into it. They don't even mention the name of the place, I don't think, in the movie. So they're staying there. In the book, they stay in 2 rooms adjacent to each other. In the movie, they're sharing a bedroom. Again, don't see what the need for that change was, but okay. So then Jacob ends up going to discover, to find out where the old children's home is, and he ends up going with those 2 like goons / rappers. His father pays them. He doesn't get a chance to stop over into like the town museum like he does in the book and see the old man. He doesn't stop into, I think it's a butcher, like a butcher for fish. I should totally know that word, and it's kind of embarrassing that I don't. But anyway, like he does in the book, because that's important for later on. But that also was ripped out of the movie, so I was disappointed about that, because the reason that those scenes happen in the book is because something really important pertaining to them happens later on, which also wasn't in the movie. So he goes, the 2 boys lead him to the house. In the book, they lead him to like a sheep house, like a sheep pen, sort of, where sheep poop, which is important for later on, but that doesn't happen. So he goes straight to the house, and whilst he's in the house, he sees the children. The children seemingly are just like chilling out of time in that house, and there's no like explanation as to why, and it doesn't make any sense, because later on they tell Jacob that like they can't really spend any time outside of their loop, otherwise they'll age. But yet the very first time when they meet him, they're outside their loop for no apparent reason, chilling in their destroyed home. And after that, he, you know, for somebody who's just now discovering that like, oh, these imaginary children that that these creepy children that I thought were fabrications of my grandfather's imagination are actually real, he is not shocked or traumatized or surprised, or the reaction he has is not it's not at all, I feel like, an appropriate reaction, or like even a normal reaction. He's just like, you're the invisible boy, and you're so-and-so, and you're so-and-so. Cool. And it's like, what? I would have been like, what? You guys are real? What am I, Possibly I might even pass out. Something, some kind of dramatic reaction. That did not happen. That was not there. And I thought it was strange. I need to go turn off this light because the light is making my parrot chatty. And this chattiness is not welcome. Anyway, so I return. So then they take him. Apparently Miss Peregrine has sent for him, which is not how it happens in the book. In the book, he spends a lot of time in the home. He ends up in his grandfather's bedroom. He mourns. He cries. It's sad. He finds a huge sort of, what do you call this? Like a huge metallic trunk. He can't break it open. He manages to like push it over sort of the indoor balcony, and it falls off the balcony and actually through the floor into the basement. So he ends up there in the basement. And he sees even more pictures of peculiar children. And then one or two happen to see him there, and then they run away from him, and then he chases after them, and then they think he's a white, and they kind of take him prisoner, and then they take him into the cairn, and so he tries to get away from them, and he runs back to the priest hole, which now in 1943, it's like a different environment, of course, you know, so they kept the part of like him going back to the priest hole trying to run away, and then like it being a different environment, he being suspected of being a spy, German spy. They kept that, but they didn't keep like the other parts, which kind of made the introduction dramatic and plausible. So anyway, so they take him in the movie. They take him to Miss Peregrine. She's waiting for him. She knows they're coming right on time. Blah blah blah. They sit down, they chit-chat, then Enoch is really unfriendly, which in the book he is kind of unfriendly too, but they make him also kind of creepy, sadistic, talking about how he used to, you know. So Enoch has this power where he can animate dead objects, which, you know, is creepy, and so he usually has these little clay figures that he makes, and he like sticks little rat hearts in them, and it makes them fight each other, but in the movie, he was like, I used to do it in my parents' morgue. It was more fun with people. And it's like, dude, really? Like, why? I don't remember that from the book, but maybe I just need to reread it. And then there's kind of this romance with him and Olive, and it's like, why? Why is this necessary? It wasn't in the book. The thing is also that they changed a lot of people's ages in the book. I mean, in the movie. Like, Enoch is not as old as he is in the movie. And Olive is also not as old as she is in the movie. Then they went ahead and swapped Olive and Emma's powers. I see no reason why that was necessary, why that change needed to happen, but they did. So yeah, so in the movie, Olive is pyrokinetic and Emma is aerokinetic. Whatever. Bronwyn also is much, much younger than she is in the book. So then he goes and it's explained to him their life, blah, blah. The twins also play a very significant role in the movie, which they didn't really in the books, but, you know, which was cool. I wasn't sort of very averse to that. So he's now starting to understand everything, and he stays for the one night for dinner, and then it's like his first night even already. So the boy who has like the important dreams is also like their entertainment, because like he has a little eyepiece that he puts on, and he can project like his dreams onto this big screen, which again, not in the book, but okay. So they watch movies that way, and then they see in the movie like Emma and Jacob, this romance, and it's like, where is this romance coming from? This romance is it's an unconvincing romance. So yeah, so then supposedly they start to have feelings for each other, Emma and Jacob, and I'm just like, where is this coming from? Yes, he looks like Abe. I wouldn't know, I didn't see what Abe looked like as a teenager, but okay, so he looks like Abe. And then, so he leaves, then the next day, he supposedly like was only visiting for a day, and the thing is that, oh, he came to give the bad news that Abe is dead. Then they get a phone call like every day because they're stuck in that loop. So at that time, Abe had called the house to, you know, give them information on what he's doing and, you know, what's happening. So that also, I don't remember that from the book. I don't see really like what it added to the film, but okay. So then he goes back home and he meets his dad, and his dad is like sour and drinking and being a loser, basically, which this is the same thing with the book. But then they already introduced the other stranger to the island, like, and the other stranger to the island is like a really social guy, doesn't wear glasses, which is really important. He should be wearing glasses all the time. He's like social, everybody likes him. He talks to them, like they talk with him on several occasions, which doesn't ever happen in the book. The off-script train is full speed ahead at this point. So they speak to him, blah, blah, blah. Still nobody suspects what's happening or who he is, anything. The livestock get attacked. He's accused. The other two boys who took him out are accused. Although the sequence in which it happens in the movie is much quicker and faster and missing a lot of things than it does in the book, but whatever. So that happens, and he's caught out for lying as not being with them, but then he figures it out that that it must be the dangerous things that they were talking about. So he goes back in the middle of the night to the home, and then they talk about. They show him some pictures of whites that belonged to his grandfather. He used to take pictures of the ones that he never caught. They kind of explain how they came to be, but I feel like it was so dumbed down. It was so dumbed down. They didn't. First of all, in the book, the whites are actually the two brothers of Miss Peregrine, and they, the problem with living in the loops and living for eternity is that you can't live outside the loop, otherwise time catches up to you and you age and you disintegrate like that dude did in Indiana Jones when he drank from in the Lost Crusade. Is it the Lost Crusade? The Lost Crusade, when he drinks from the wrong chalice, and then he just shrivels up and turns to dust. So that's the problem. So the brothers of Miss Peregrine decide that they want to find a way to get outside of that rule and master nature or whatever. And live forever and be gods. And so they get an Umbran, and they run this test. And they run it, I think, in Siberia somewhere. They run this test, and the test kind of works because they can live outside of the loops now, but they've turned into weird, creepy monsters with tentacles that come out from their mouths, but they don't have eyes, and just creepiness. And those are the hollow goths. They're hollow inside. And yeah, but it's really well explained in the book, and it's very in depth, and it's you read it and you're like, whoa. In the movie, it's not really well explained, and because in the movie, then you don't understand how it is they got to know about that. The key to breaking free from the loops, whatever, is Umbrans. They knew that, you understand that in the book because the brothers are brothers of an Umbran, and so they have insider knowledge on how that whole Umbran time looping thing works, and this is where they get that idea. So that was different. I was happy to see Samuel L. Jackson. I didn't know he would be in the movie, but I guess maybe I didn't see trailer 2. But yeah, I was happy to see him. But the thing that I didn't like was that, so we see a glimpse of him at the beginning of the movie when Jacob gets to his grandfather's house, and all that sadness ensues. That's what we see. Then, so now, later on, back to the point where I was, Jacob getting back, telling them, and now it's being explained to him the full extent of, why they live in the loops. All of this that happened, the whites, the Holocaust. And he's now explaining to them about how he thinks they've been found on the island, and, animals have been killed. It's, he explains that to them, and they're like, okay, well, we have to leave. And already the first time when he left, a little injured bird appeared in the cairn, and Emma knew that it had to be an Umbran, and it was injured, and so she took it back, and we cut back now when Jacob is back, and we see Miss Peregrine, nursing this poor Umbran back to health, and it's in the book she's never, that's Miss Avocet, the other Umbran, and she's not in bird form in the book. She's person form, she's injured, she explains everything that happened to them, she's in and out of consciousness, Like, you know. So I was just like, again, why? Why the change? So anyway, so then that happens. So now they're packing to leave, right? And I guess I'm like missing a part because like the parts kind of blurred a little bit together in the movie, but like he's gone back to warn them after the animals have been caught. And so this is the part that they left out, which was in the book, which could have made the film so much more, could have given the film so much more depth. So somebody, aside from the animals being murdered, a person goes missing. A person who they've met a couple of times and they've kind of gotten to know, and he goes missing. When he turns up, he's dead, and he's like, it looks like he's been clawed up by a wild animal. It's awful. And then Jacob puts the two and two together. So he's gone back to tell them, to warn Miss Peregrine. So as he's going, his father's chasing after him, and he's like, you're not going anywhere out of my sight because you lied to me and not this crazy person on the side. So then the other bird seeker white who's like been chit-chatting with them and all of this, which doesn't happen in the book, is like, oh, don't worry, I'll chase after him. I run 5Ks all the time. Random. So he chases after Jacob, goes into the cairn, and Jacob goes into the cairn now from some different path. It's not the path that he's been consistently taking, that we've seen in the movie, and it's definitely not the same consistent path that he's been taking in the book, but he goes through some different path here by the ocean, and then, you know, that person, the other bird watcher, materializes, and then Jacob realizes, because the guy doesn't die when he enters the passage to the loop. Dr. Golden reveals himself, and he reveals that he's a shapeshifter, forces Jacob to take him to Miss Peregrine's. Not at all how it happens in the book. In the book, they follow very, from a distance, very clandestine-like, and it's not only Dr. Golden, but anyway, and then he appears at the home. So now they're there at the house, and he's giving orders, Dr. Golden, and then Miss Peregrine and him have like a word off. They like have a face-off of words. But then they make Dr. Golden kind of comical and like, so she's like, nobody tells my children what to do. And he's like, then she tells him the same thing, like, that he ordered, and then they start doing it, and he's like, no, that's very nice. She's like, I told you not to speak. And he's like, and it's like, oh, kind of, like, the whole cinema kind of, like, chuckled a little bit, and I was like, what is this? Like, in the book, Dr. Golden is like, he means business. This is no joke whatsoever. There's no, like, he comes with a gun. He's there with a gun. He is prepared to kill people, you know. Now, in the movie, he's kind of like this jokey kind of, and they continue on that jokey kind of strain with him, because later on when he's meeting with, like, the other whites, he's also kind of, like, upset with them, and he's like, do you think I did all of this? I was in Florida for 3 weeks. Have you ever been to Florida? And it's like, why have you made this really dark, scary, imposing character a joke? I don't understand it. I was upset about that. Now he's kidnapped Miss Peregrine, but in the book he kidnaps both Miss Peregrine and Miss Avocet. In this, he only kidnaps Miss Peregrine. She leaves. Miss Avocet is still with the kids, so they have like one person, and that one person, she's like trying to save them and to keep them safe, but then she gets snatched up by a hollow, and we just don't ever know what happens to her again after that. We don't know if she's been murdered or if she's also been like forced to turn into a bird and captured and caged. Like, and Miss Avocet, I should have mentioned this from the beginning, is played by the impressionable Judi Dench, by the Dench. And yeah, just don't know what happened to her after that. Didn't see her again. So I was like, what? Okay. Again, a change that didn't need to happen, but it did. And so then Jacob now is gonna, you know, face off with this hologas and save people. And the way in which they end up leaving the home, they do it through the girl who can like manipulate plants and wildlife and stuff. She does her thing, and that provides like a bridge through this tree for them to go over. So they escape, which is different than in the book, but I'm not like crying over it, whatever. It was okay. But then, like, when the house does get bombed. There's this beautiful scene in the book where they go and they bury Victor, Bronwyn, the strong girl, his brother, who's been dead for eternity, I guess, this whole time in the loop. So they go and they bury him under this like tree statue thing that the girl who manipulates plants has made of Adam, which is kind of the place where they go every night to reset the loop. So they bury him under Adam, and it's really like, I remember tearing up when I was reading it, that, whew, that wasn't in the book. I mean, that wasn't in the movie. Could have been. I don't know why it wasn't. It could have made it really emotive, but I guess it was too dark. But then again, the film is masquerade, like it's being advertised and like pushed as a dark children's story. But then there's no darkness really in the movie. Okay, they're running away from this Holocaust, and this Holocaust is coming after them. Turns out Jacob's a terrible shot with a crossbow. And what ends up happening is that the Holocaust gets caught up in the bomb and exploded, woo, with the house when they fail to reset the loop. So then they get away. And then they get, so this is where I was just like, I'm calling bull in this. Like, because now they are chasing after Dr. Golan, just like they are in the book, right? Dr. Golan came there on a boat, surely. So they're going to have to leave on a boat too. Now, what has been set up before is that Emma has this little boat that takes her to this place where she goes to be alone, which is another boat, like a sunken boat, a massive ship. So now, in the movie, they're going to chase after Dr. Golan in this sunken ship. They're going to go into this sunken ship. Emma's going to suck all the water or blow all the water out of it. I didn't really know whether she was sucking or blowing, whatever. She's going to get all the water out of it with her air manipulation. Olive is going to fire up the cisterns, whatever, with her pyrokinesis, right? So it's going to like, woo, woo, because the coal, I don't know how that's happening, that like wet coal is burning like this, but you know, she's going to fire it up. And this sunken boat is rising from the depths of the ocean, very much like, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like a good example, and I can't, but bloop, it pops up of the water and then rights itself on the water. And I'm like, okay, but this boat sank for a reason. How is it that it's not sinking now? Like, how are they? Okay, anyway, so boom, there they are, full steam ahead in this boat, chasing after Dr. Golan. Massive ship. What? Nonsense. Like, it's just all nonsense. So off they go. Chase after Dr. Golan. Dr. Golan supposedly is in this tower. And in the film, he's in a lighthouse. And he's got the two Umbrans with him. And he's shooting at people. And the Invisible Boy gets shot because they make a plan to kind of go after him. And the Invisible Boy is kind of their main element because he can't be seen. But somehow Dr. Golan can see like the negative space around him. And he shoots him and he gets shot and he's bleeding. And then Bronwyn, gets a door from somewhere and like she uses that as a shield, and they all charge towards this lighthouse, and boom, in they go. And then it ends up being only Jacob and Emma who have to climb up these stairs and fight Dr. Golan. Dr. Golan gets shot and falls off the lighthouse. The Umbrans also fall off when he sends them off, and it's it's dramatic. And Miss Peregrine is injured and doesn't turn back into like a person because she can't do that when she's injured. This is the book. So in the movie, they end up like at a theme park somewhere on the main island, and he's basically there. It's like watching a cartoon, really, because you know how cartoon villains always just like spend a decent amount of time explaining their evil plan, for reasons that are unbeknown to anyone. And then the good guy sort of has a chance during this long explanation to like figure out a way to escape. That's basically what happens. He's there, he's talking, he's, addressing the audience of his fellow whites, and it's all very comical. Like, it's very like, nah, this is when he's like, have you ever been to Florida? Please. So a bunch of them go there. It was interesting, though. I will say that the film did do something interesting with kind of showing us the other whites, sort of their peculiarities, which we don't really see in the book, so that was cool. But yeah, so it's like, it really felt like Home Alone, Now it was kind of like a snow day Home Alone, where the kids were like on this plan to like distract and separate and divide the whites and the holocasts, because like, so the holocasts are moving with the whites, and the whites are trying to get their holocaust friends to become like whites like them again, like to reclaim human form again. And so again, this is my issue with that it just really felt like Home Alone. They were like pranks and throwing snow at the holocaust so that they could be seen again, like, and so they're in this theme park and there are a lot of people around. And nobody really is, the kind of pandemonium and panic that I was expecting was supposed to be on a level of like Jurassic World when that craziness started happening. And that didn't happen in this film at all. It was just like, people were just like walking and like, oh, my car just bumped into nothing, but it crashed. Okay. And like things walking around and creepy people with like white eyes that glow in the daytime. Still, nobody really was like, there wasn't the kind of pandemonium or craziness that I thought should accompany that. They end up being like, oh, besting all the whites. All whites get bested. Although there's one white, the one who can like freeze things, who actually almost kills Bronwyn and Olive. So then Olive gets saved by Enoch, and then there's also this other forced romance that's going on with Enoch and Olive, which I was, again, why? And there's also this weird sort of love triangle that they're kind of pushing at the beginning, where Enoch is in love with Emma, and he's jealous. Before he was jealous of Abe, now he's jealous of Jacob, because supposedly Emma and Jacob have, stop it. Honestly, I was just like, just stop it, all of it. What ends up happening there at the end is that there's this big showdown between Dr. Golan and Jacob. Then Dr. Golan morphs into Jacob, and you know, then it's like, oh, we have to guess who the real Jacob is. And then Dr. Golan actually gets killed by one of the holocasts, because one of the holocasts can't tell the difference between Jacob and Dr. Golan. What? Well, at the end, they all escape and they go back to their time. And Jacob stays in his time. So the time thing isn't properly explained in the movie. In the book, they explain about this book which maps all the different loops. And they explain that that's real time travel, because you're going from different loops which are in different times. That's real time travel. And at the end of all of it, it turns out that this place where the scary festival thing, where the big showdown happens to be at the beginning of 2016. So at the end of it, the bad guys got, Jacob is able to stay in 2016 in his time. This is before his grandfather's death. He runs back to his grandfather and he tells him, I'm sorry, I didn't believe you. And it's beautiful and poetic. And the grandfather is like, here's your birthday present. He gives him a book. And with the money, to like many different currencies. And he's like, go and find her. You know, meaning the love of Jacob's life. Meaning the former love of Grandpa Abe Portman's life. And I was like, people need to stop with these very creepy romances, okay? We saw it with Steve Rogers and Agent Carter's niece. And now it's like, oh, I used to date her, I'm your granddad. You should totally go and find her. The love of your life as well. And like make out with the girl I used to make out with. Stop it! Ew! No, just stop. So then the whole story becomes about him time traveling from loop to loop so that he can find Emma, the love of his life. And they embrace and they kiss. And it turns out that the new Miss Peregrine's home is still that massive, formerly sunken ship. That's where they live now, traveling from place to place, I guess, I don't know, in this loop. And Miss Peregrine is well and healed and like perched up on top of like a very huge, either it's like a lighthouse or something that looks like the Eiffel Tower, jutting forth out of the ocean, or a pier or something, I don't know. But she's like rubbing her shoulder as if she's still recovering from an injury, or the injury that happened because of Baron, that evil white. And it's just like, and then it ends. And you know, my thing with that also is that the music at the end is like, it's been this dark film all along, and then at the end the music is like so and like romantic and uplifting and inspiring, and like he charges forth to go and claim the love of his life. And I was like, what is happening? Stop it! Off script. And then that off-script train went and crashed and exploded. I just, oh. So, speaking of like romances that are not convincing, yes, do join me for another episode of Book HQ, because in the next episode I'm going to be talking about The Mortal Instruments, both the book, the movie, and Shadowhunters, the series on Netflix. Okay, so that's my review on Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, the movie and the book. The book is infinitely greater than the movie, even though the movie really did have very good cinematography, and the lighting was good. It was dark, but it wasn't so dark that you couldn't see what was happening. The pacing was kind of okay, but I just, this is what my advice is. If you have read the book, do not watch the movie. And if you have watched the movie, do not read the book. Because one will spoil the other for you. Or, you will really hate one because of the other. So just like pick one and go with that one and stick with that one. It doesn't look like there's going to be a sequel. Really, they really ended it in a very finite way. He gets the girl, evil guys are gone, dead, bad. Miss Peregrine is still alive and well, although we still don't know what happened to this episode. The world is saved, and very neat bow was tied on that, and it's done. So I don't know if there'll be a sequel or not. It really doesn't, I don't see how they would make a sequel. And I think it's unfortunate, because I feel like if they had stuck more to the book, there would be room for you to have a sequel. And the other thing with that is, I think they're playing it safe, the production house, because, people have seen how things went with the Hunger Games and Divergent. Although, to be fair, with Divergent, Screen Junkies even said that was really just the Hunger Games without the games. And I feel like people really have reached this sort of dystopian future teen angst fatigue, because of, the similarity between the two, and like there's so many of them. But I say that, and there's still another Maze Runner film that's coming out, so it might not even be that. But the thing is, I feel like this really, if it had been done differently, could have left space for 2 more sequels for the other 2 books. And I don't know why they just went so off script and did their own things. I feel like this is like, like when you order in some countries, you order a Coke and they bring you a Pepsi. I feel like this was the Pepsi of Miss Peregrine's Home for Imaginary Children. And they're not the same. It looks like a Coke, and it's, has the same fizziness as a Coke. It's a soft drink too, but it is not Coke. It's Pepsi. And this is my feeling on Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, the movie. So those are my thoughts. Please do comment and tell me what you thought about it. Tell me if you think my whole assessment of the film is bollocks, or if you agree, or what you thought. If you have a completely different feeling and different thoughts on it, I would love to know. So do share, comment in the comments below, give the video a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or anything really. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Book HQ. And like I said, join me for another episode coming soon, where we'll be talking about the Mortal Instruments. And boy, do I have a lot to say